Hey, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs podcast hosted by two comedians who live in New York, but love the Cubs nonetheless. I'm one of them. I'm Adam Mamawala, and I'm here with Kevin McCaffrey. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm good. I'm the other one. It would be weird if there was a reveal of a third one. Hi, I'm Kevin McCaffrey. I'm here to mediate between Adam and his other comedian friend who will do the podcast. Yeah, I'm all right. You know.
Good.
Yeah.
The world's... I'm glad to hear that. The World Series is upon us, Kevin.
It is. It is. We are on the doorstep of the World Series, and it should be. It should be a good one. I mean, you know, most years it should be a good one, but I think this is as we talked about a little bit last week. I think these two teams specifically pitching matchup wise, it's like it could be one of the best pitching matchups ever.
Oh yeah, it's the first three games are a bunch of guys who could be number ones on almost any other team.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
Yeah, if you put together a list of pitchers who have at one point been a number one for their team, between these two teams, I mean, you're looking at
like 7 or 8 guys.
Yeah,
because even like Anibal Sanchez was a number one at some point.
I was going to say, yeah, I think Sanchez was a number one for the Marlins at some point. Yeah,
which is not saying much, but it is saying something.
Yeah, I think he was with them when they were a little bit better. And
didn't he throw a no-hitter there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got a no-hitter, and then obviously Verlander, Cole, Scherzer, Corbin, Strasburg. I mean, this is it's a Greinke. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're talking 7 or 8 number ones here at some point. So it's going to be an all-time great, and of course, you know, the games will probably be 9-8 now or something. But like, it's a very cool, very sort of cool matchup here.
Well, yeah, it's what you want in a World Series is like, let's see the best guys go up against each other, and in this case, pitching wise specifically, I think it's going to be really fun. Follow us at Away Games Pod, by the way, on Twitter and Instagram. We will probably one or both of us will probably be live tweeting a good number of the games. I don't know if you're planning to watch most of it, but I'm hoping to. Yeah,
this is because sometimes I will take a chunk of the World Series. Like, I'll just sort of see it if I'm at a bar and it's on. You know, there are years where I care that little, and it's not that I'm super invested. Although with every waking day, I'm getting more invested in watching the Astros not win. I guess with everything that comes out about that organization, but. Yeah, like I am. These are two teams that I think can have a lot of fun this series, and I kind of hope it goes along, and I hope the Nationals win. I hope the Nationals win a lot, actually. So
yeah, it's kind of hard to picture anybody other than Astros fans, or maybe like, you know, other NL East team fans not rooting for the Nats.
Right, people who have a specific distaste for the Washington Nationals, I understand, maybe rooting for the Astros, but. Otherwise, yeah, the Astros, let's go down the reasons we wouldn't want the Astros to win, or why we would want the Nationals to win. Why I would be rooting against the Astros. One, they just won recently, so for that reason, that's a tiebreaker.
Right. If the Astros hadn't won in 2017, I would be much more torn on who I was rooting for.
Right.
Just baseball-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've 3 years of 100 wins in a row, trending towards just a fully undefeated season. They've gotten better each year in terms of regular season wins. So I like...
Frankly, they're doing what we kind of thought and hoped the Cubs would be doing.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember, and since this is a Cubs podcast primarily, I remember... going into Game 7, really going into the World Series in 2016, and also happy anniversary of making the World Series. And as we are recording the day before it's released, this is when the Cubs clinched.
All-time great game, great moment.
All-time great.
That Game 6 at Wrigley was like one of the only relatively stress-free, just enjoyable, pure joy moments of that whole run.
I totally agree, and I was going to say that where that Game 6 in so many ways is sneaky, almost my favorite game of all time, where obviously winning the World Series is the ultimate thing, but it's hard to beat that Game 6 for just pure joy about things. I remember I was out, my wife's birthday is October 23rd, so happy birthday, Jamie. So as this comes out, she had a small birthday gathering, and it was the night of Game 6. So I was at the birthday gathering until Game 6 started up, and I was like, I'll see you at home, which she totally understood. She knows. And then the rest of the people who were hanging out came back by like the middle of the game, and I was just sitting there with a drink in hand, just getting progressively happier. Then Hendricks outduels Kershaw, and Kershaw wasn't bad, but seeing Hendricks as man that we've talked about. Hendricks being underrated as an ace for a lot, and I mean, outdueling Kershaw to get to the World Series, it's hard to be more ace-ish than that, and facing the minimum.
They faced the minimum, yeah. I mean, the whole game, which, I as much as I'm eternally grateful to have been at World Series Game 5, that was so stressful. I mean,
yes.
Even watching it for you, I know, like in the bar nearby was stressful, and same with, going to Game 3, which was another tight one, like, it was super fun, and it was amazing to be at Wrigley for a World Series, but I think I enjoyed it more in retrospect than I did in the moment because I was so tense the whole time, whereas I have to imagine that, we all were thinking, even when the Cubs were up 5-0 in Game 6 of the NLCS, like, well, let's not take anything for granted, let's not count outs, all of that, but like, you could feel it happening, and as we got closer to the end, you're like, oh, this is going to happen now.
Yeah, and then that double play is on you before you felt like it even could be, and it was over. And yeah, it is hard for me to match that just pure level of being happy and excited. As soon as it ended, I was blasting Kanye's Homecoming. I was buying plane tickets.
I bought a ticket that night.
Yep. So yeah, that's a nice anniversary of things today. But as we were going into that, I remember thinking, okay, the Cubs are either gonna lose this World Series and never win it in my lifetime, or they're gonna win it and win like 4 of the next 7. That's what I thought, and I think a lot of us thought that at the time too. And like you said, the Astros are sort of their team, even though they've only won 1 so far, and that's another reason to root for them to just stay at 1. But yeah, they've sort of been the consistent powerhouse that we thought we were getting.
Yeah. Now, give me the other reasons why you're rooting against the Astros.
Well, a lot of the other ones are related, I guess. They're related to Roberto Osuna, and we're not throwing fastballs in a glass house because our team, when we won the World Series, also traded for a closer who was suspended for domestic abuse. But
you know what? Real quick.
Yeah.
The reason that I find it more distasteful for the Astros, and frankly, I don't think there's any justification for it, no matter how desperate you are to win.
Yeah.
They traded for him the year after they won the World Series.
Right. No, I know what you mean. Where it's like
the Cubs did it, and I'm not defending it, and you and I hated it at the time, and I still hate that he was a part of that team. But they went all in, saying like, we need to win a World Series because we haven't done that. The Astros won the World Series in 2017, and then in 2018, we're still willing to compromise their morals to trade for Osuna for nothing, which is how the Yankees acquired Chapman.
Yeah, and if you want to know how hateable and detestable Roberto Osuna is as a guy, you can look at the comments, any of his comments from afterwards. You can look at the details about what happened. You can look at how long the suspension was and how weak baseball has traditionally been on domestic violence and how strong they went against him. And we won't get into all those details right now, but you can look it up. It's not a lot of gray area with Osuna. Yeah. There's not a lot of mystery to this. And they traded for this piece of shit, and we're also one of the, as I refer to Roberto Osuna as a piece of shit, which he is as a human, he's bad and irredeemable. It reminds me that we are one of the few explicit podcasts in the Cubs podcast universe. Smash that explicit button.
Yeah, we will cost ourselves listener to call Osuna fucking piece of shit.
Yeah, just a real piece of trash. You piece of fucking trash, Roberto Osuna.
Let's just talk like Mike Schilt for the rest of this podcast.
Well, yeah, let's talk like Mike Schilt. And then if we were like Schilt, our podcast would get immediately canceled after we talk a bunch of shit. But yeah, we'll tag
Talk a bunch of Schilt?
Talk a bunch of Schilt. Come on, baby. We still got it. Yeah, so Osuna being on the team, that's a guy not to root for. Then there was an incident that just came out after the game, after the Astros clinched. Their assistant general manager, Brandon Taubman, and God, if you look at a photo of this guy, and it's the douchiest face. His face is not the problem here, but man, is this a bad face? That Astros executive Brandon Taubman. It's just so fucking punchable. Basically, what happened was he's the assistant general manager of the Astros, and he yelled in the direction of a group of female reporters. And this is according to the Houston Chronicle, by the way. This is reported by SI first, but he yelled directly at a group of female reporters. Thank God we got Osuna. I'm so fucking glad we got Osuna. About a half dozen times towards the group. And Yahoo Sports' Hannah Kaiser tweeted that she confirmed the allegation. She could confirm the allegations as well. And one of the women was wearing a purple domestic violence awareness bracelet. And as a reminder, Osuna served a 75-game suspension for this. And this guy basically was yelling that in the direction of female,
unprovoked, seemingly.
Yeah, just just a weak. Yeah. And
to be clear, it would in no way be justified under any circumstances. No. But, and I was saying this in our group chat with Ken Schultz last night. Mm-hmm. If, let's say they were lifting the trophy over their heads and somebody chose at that moment to inquire about Osuna and him being on the team, you still have to answer for that. But mm-hmm. if somebody in the heat of the moment got upset about the question being asked and lashed out, I could understand the rationale for why somebody would behave that way. It would still be wrong.
Yeah.
But I could understand why somebody would be like that. But to just be like taunting people for no reason and to be bragging basically about, I'm so glad that we got this domestic abuser. Like what is the message there?
It's just a limp dick trust fund motherfucker who came into this game. His team, as you said, it's going to the World Series, and this is the thing he's thinking about.
By the way, how did Osuna pitch in that game?
Let me check the box score. Not well. He didn't do baseball well.
If he came in and struck out the side,
yeah,
at least from a baseball perspective,
yeah,
I could understand you being like, I'm so glad we got Osuna. He is very good at pitching well.
There would be at least some sort of, you could talk your way into a logistical defense of this guy yelling this in a way that wasn't just attacking women. But this is why, so this guy's a piece of shit anyway, but this is another reason to root against the Astros. The Astros released this as a statement. The story posted by Sports Illustrated is misleading and completely irresponsible. An Astros player was being asked questions about a difficult outing. Our executive was supporting the player during a difficult time. His comments had everything to do about the game situation that just occurred and nothing else. They were also not directed toward any specific reporters. We are extremely disappointed in Sports Illustrated's attempt to fabricate a story where one does not exist. God. That is the organization's official response when this is provably false. This was not Osuna being asked questions. I think we would see if this guy was in an interview, right? If these comments were being shouted during an Osuna interview. That's not what this was. That is clearly not what this was. Taubman was, according to the Houston Chronicle, Taubman was holding a cigar and standing with 2 or 3 other men when he yelled his comments. And there were 3.
Well, of course. Yeah. I mean, what else would you be doing?
It's just a cartoon depiction of a villain.
Yeah,
here.
I'm picturing like Boss Tweed. Like, what was this scene exactly?
Yeah, and a villain is like too strong a word because this is such a weak motherfucker. Yeah, and this earlier in the year, by the way. It's like this is it. You can understand if it's one bad apple situation, but the organization is defending it too.
Well, and didn't is it Luno? Am I saying that properly?
Yeah, that's
Jeff Luno?
Yeah.
He apparently, when they acquired Osuna, tried to frame it as actually this is a positive thing because this is bringing awareness to an important situation.
Yeah.
So it's good. So pat on the back to us for acquiring this guy because now it's getting the conversation started.
Right. It's a lot of, it's just straight bad by the Astros top to bottom. It's embarrassing, and they have basically they've caused in a good way. They've caused a bunch of reporters to come together backing the original Sports Illustrated report. There was
and on the other side we have Doolittle, who's one of the most fun dudes around.
Sean Doolittle,
and noted asshole Hudson, who selfishly
had a kid and was there for its birth.
You're like the Daniel Hudson of comedy. Tell everybody what you're doing tonight.
Oh, well, last night, I suppose last night when this airs, I did a stand-up show. It's basically it's a benefit at Caroline's, and it is for the Children's Brain Tumor Family nonprofit organization. Basically, it's the Children's Brain Tumor Family Foundation. It's built by families who have been united by tragedy, specifically children who've suffered brain tumors, brain cancer. And you can follow them at C_B_T_F_F. CBTFF with underscores in between it. They do a lot of good work. So, yeah, I did stand up at Caroline's with some other very funny people as a benefit to raise money for children's brain cancer. Also, I'm an asshole. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, from where I stand as somebody who wanted to watch the World Series with you, I just think it's a really selfish move.
It is fairly selfish on my part. And I do not apologize because I'm a piece of shit. Yeah, Brandon Taubman, huge piece of shit. I would love, man, I wish we could get people like that on to talk to on our podcast. The Astros also made him unavailable for comment. That's how much he could stand behind his stuff. The reporters asked for comment, and the Astros made him unavailable, and then made that completely false. It's an overused word, but it really is. It fits the definition of fucking gaslighting. That comment. And
I just want to note that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, an assistant general manager you think could talk. It's not a private position.
Well, I was going to say that in the background, as you may hear, Kevin is shaking some sort of drink with ice in it, and I want you as listeners to believe that he's actually shaking a can of spray paint standing outside of Brandon Taubman's house.
Yeah,
Got a graffiti piece of shit on the side of his home.
Yeah,
palatial Houston area home.
Yeah, fucking turd. Yeah, so fuck the Astros, I guess. Even though they have, Jose Altuve is great. Love him. George Springer kicks ass. He's great. Alex Bregman.
Nothing in the world made me happier than seeing Altuve be the one to hit that home run off of Chapman with his stupid shit-eating grin that was exactly like the Rajai Davis home run.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
It's like, how could this happen to me? I'm so good.
It's just good versus evil, baby. It's nice when good wins in a good versus evil matchup, and hopefully.
I'm proud to say, and I think you were about to tweet the same thing, that before that inning started, I tweeted something from our Away Games account about like how lovely would it be to see both of these guys suck.
Yeah,
inning.
And it happened exactly. It was truly great to see. You do love to see it. That was wonderful. Now rooting for the Nationals because of all that bullshit that the Astros did to go out of their way to be the bad guys here.
And also, how relieved are you thinking about going into the NLCS with the prospect of a Yankees-Cardinals World Series? This is pretty great.
Yeah, it was almost all downside. And now we actually do have a rooting interest, and I would love to see. I mean, specifically, I would love to see. We'd like to see the Nationals win. But thinking about perfect endings, would there be anything more fun than watching Max Scherzer come out of the bullpen on short rest or something and close out? Okay, I mean, he might literally catch on fire if he, comes out at the. He's so fun to watch in the most intense moments.
And let's have Osuna blow a couple more saves.
Osuna blow every game of the series would be wonderful. Be great stuff.
And then our boy can say, "Thank God we got Osuna when the Astros lose the World Series."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Heck yeah, I'm going to do some research about that piece of shit. Brandon Taubman, if you want to, Taub.
If you want to harass him.
Yeah, if you want to harass this piece of shit.
He won't respond because he doesn't know how to talk.
No, he can't talk, which, props to him for getting the assistant GM job without being able to talk. He actually noises only come out of his body if he's screaming on behalf of a domestic abuser at women for no reason. That's the only way he's able to generate a voice. This tiny dick limp motherfucker. So there you go.
Wait, is he a tiny dick limp motherfucker or is he a tiny limp dick motherfucker?
I feel like that's a personal preference thing.
But let's really earn this explicit tag.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like his whole body is limp. I'm begging you to look at the photo of this D-bag's face. It is so...
Brandon Taubman?
Taubman. I can't remember if there's one or two N's at the end, but yeah. Yeah. It's just like he looks like every finance guy who like will be doing shots at the bar, sending shots to women who don't want it and then trying to start a fight with another guy, but then having his friends hold him back. Like, that's what this face says.
Picture if Ryan from The Office worked for a baseball team.
Very good. Yeah, it's Ryan from The Office, a little more masculine looking, but still, yes, that's a good comp, I think. So, fun news. Good job. Thanks for that news, Astros.
Basically, it's like he's like the classic guy who's always wearing a suit but is never wearing a tie. You know what I mean? Like the couple buttons unbuttoned.
Yeah, but it's like the one thing every day. It's yeah, totally. So the Astros went out of their way to give us some really beyond annoying bad guy news. So thanks for that, and go Nationals.
Well, this is fun. So you kind of got into it, perhaps unintentionally, talking about Scherzer coming out of the bullpen or things like that. Like, what are a couple things that you think would be like super fun if you could just like conjure up how you would want this World Series to play out? What are some like moments that you would love to see? Like, I would love to see Zimmerman homer in a game in Washington. Like, that would be really cool.
That's a great call. And that reminds me, I saw someone tweet who's going to throw out the first pitch for the Nationals, which is an interesting question because it usually, for the Cubs, you're bringing out like old legends during the World Series game, Ryan Sandberg throwing out first pitch, stuff like that. But you think it's like, who are the Nationals legends? Chad Cordero?
I would use famous Expos mascot Youppi.
See, that would, if they had connected that sort of history, you could get some cool Expos guys, Andre Dawson, Tim Raines, there's cool Expos there, but it's so detached. So I was like, I think the answer is Ryan Zimmerman.
Is it going to be like Jason Worth or some idiot?
I mean, it's going to be, I don't know. I truly don't know because the team is so young that there's no real like retired legends. That's why I was
Livan Hernandez?
Livan, maybe, yeah. Maybe their original ace, perhaps. But I think Ryan Zimmerman is kind of Mr. National, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a weird case where the most notable guy in their team, the like sort of longest tenured dude is still with them when this happens. It's
a little bit like when David Wright finally got to play in a World Series in 2015. It has the same kind of feel to it.
That's true. And David Wright did get a sort of peak dramatic fun homer in his home park, and it would be great to see Zimmerman do the same thing. I think that's a really good call. Sean Doolittle, anything Sean Doolittle gets to do is great. I would love to see him close out a game. Whoa.
Oh, something just fell.
Yeah, that was in your place, right?
It was.
Okay, cool.
I'm not going to investigate, but I'm going to assume everything's okay.
Okay, cool. New York, baby. It's exciting.
That was me knocking Brandon Taubman out.
Yeah. He didn't even mean to do it, and I would love to see, like I said, I've mentioned this on 2 other baseball podcasts this week, actually. I've had a big baseball podcast week. Did Bleed Cubby Blue with Sarah Sanchez. Follow them if you don't. And I did that podcast yesterday, pinch hitting for Andy, and then was on Ken Schultz's new podcast for Outsports. And I think I mentioned this on both of them, but with all these pitchers, we have the opportunity, if it goes like 7 games, to have a bunch of weirdness out of the bullpen where we might have the best collection of pitchers ever to appear in a single game together.
Yeah.
If you think about this, like 3 Hall of Fame starters and then guys like Garrett Cole, in addition to your Hall of Famers, and Steven Strasburg coming out, it could be possibly the best collection of talent in a single World Series game ever.
Well, yeah, because I mean, think about how the Nationals approach the wild card game, which is like we're going to piggyback like Scherzer, Strass, and Corbin.
Right.
Imagine if that happened in a Game 7 against the Astros doing the same thing. You're talking about, as you're saying, like a historically good collection of pitchers in one game.
Yeah, so I think that would be a particularly neat thing to see. What else do you want to see specifically as a fun thing?
I mean, just even though I'm rooting against the Astros, like I always love to see Altuve do well. They're a very likable team. Like I love Bregman. Bregman's probably Bregman and Scherzer are 2 of my favorite non-Cubs. So it's cool to see them in the same series. But
absolutely agree.
Yeah, I'd love to see Scherzer do really well. Trying to think if there's anything else specific. I mean, like guys like Soto or whatever. Like I have a feeling we're gonna be seeing plenty more of him in playoffs for years to come. So I'm not as amped up about like, oh, I hope he gets some signature moment.
But I mean, we thought that about Trout too. I mean, I think Washington is a better, is like a better organization, has been run better than Anaheim. But you never know.
Well, and speaking of Trout, not to get away from the World Series, but since we last spoke, obviously Madden has officially become the manager of the Angels, and I could not be happier about it. Like, for all of the places for him to go, it really would have bummed me out for him to even be with like the Padres or somebody that we were going to play. Like the Angels, having just been at Wrigley this year, they won't be at Wrigley for 6 years. Like, we might not see Madden back at Wrigley unless it's in a World Series or in an All-Star game or something like that. But yeah, I mean, what a cool thing that would be if somehow the Cubs and Angels played in the World Series. That would be quite the spectacle.
Yeah, and I mean, it just makes the Angels, the Angels are a weird combination of extremely fun and entirely boring. They have, they have Mike Trout, who's the best player in the world. I think that's fun. Also loves the weather. Neat. Then Shohei Ohtani may be the most interesting player in the world. Get that man a Dos Equis sponsorship. He truly, like, there's a few people cooler than just the setup of what Shohei is, especially if he comes back to pitch next year. And also, what a good man. And then, like, Joe Madden is the most fun manager, Yep. So I think, and they got Tommy La Stella, who's fun. And hopefully his restraining order on Jesse Rogers holds up. But yeah, it's like, it's a very cool, I now have a full-on secondary team that I will be interested to watch.
Oh, completely. Because I already, and I think you're like this too, like, we already kind of like the Angels. Like, I bought tickets just to see Trout and Ohtani at Yankee Stadium when neither of them played, unfortunately. But they've always been a team that I've liked, and I've always felt that it's a real disservice to baseball fans for Trout to not really be in the playoffs, because so few, even intense fans like us, get to see him on a regular basis because of how late those games are. Yeah. And how irrelevant the team is. That I hope it happens, and it would not surprise me in the least if they're a playoff team, like, right out of the gate next year.
No, I mean, they could make a couple of quick moves. Josh Reddick specifically said, it's weird that while the season's still going on, a teammate would say something like this, but Reddick said that he expects Garrett Cole to sign somewhere out west next year. So, I mean, if the Angels sign a Garrett Cole, and I would not be surprised if the Angels kind of have a bit of a black hole at catcher. And you know who has two starting caliber catchers and is trying to shake up a roster is the Chicago Cubs. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see the Angels make a deal for, I mean, I don't know what the Angels could offer and would be willing to offer that would be
I would consider Caratini for Trout straight up, but they would need to throw in some sort of extra minor leaguers.
Yeah, throw in Joe Adele and I think we're good. Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't know what they could offer that would be worth Contreras, because I don't think they're offering Joe Adele, for instance. But I just want to right a wrong and trade Descalzo for La Stella. Yeah, that would be fair. That is something that's not even a hindsight call. I wrote a piece about for BP Wrigleyville, RIP BP Wrigleyville, about keeping La Stella, and I was very mad about basically the functional La Stella for Descalzo swap out last year. And yes, that would be a wrong I would love to right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess that leads us into the Cubs talk of this week, which is right.
Yeah. Any other World Series thoughts? I mean, it's always fun to see walk-offs. Like, I feel like that is always a cool thing. Has there been? When's the last time there was a Game 7 walk-off? Because I know obviously there's Joe Carter, but like, is it Mazeroski all that time ago?
I think Mazeroski's the only Game 7, right? Because Carter was Game 6, I believe. Was the last time there was a walk-off, and then Luis Gonzalez. In the 2001 World Series, walked it off.
Oh, right, yeah.
So that's 2001, right? And then
was Altuve the first walk-off home run in an LCS since Ishikawa?
Maybe. I guess I don't really know off. I can't think of another one.
Ishikawa did it against the Cardinals. Maglio Ordonez hit a walk-off, I think, grand slam to win the LCS in maybe that would have been like 2006.
Okay. Yeah,
it's happened a couple times.
Yeah, but I think I think you're right. It is the first, unless I'm just completely overlooking something. It's the first in a while for sure.
And quick note about that home run. I read a cool little tidbit about Brett Gardner that apparently he's a good egg.
Oh, good.
after that ball bounced off the facade or whatever and bounced back onto the field, he made a point to find the Astros bullpen catcher and handed him the Altuve ball and said something along the lines of like congrats, you guys are a great team. Go represent the AL well and win the World Series.
Well, that's
Which
cool.
is a hard thing to do, walking off the field possibly for your last time as a member of the Yankees.
Right, because Gardner's a free agent going into this year, and
he's been there for 10. I think he was there when they won in 2009.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and he's 35, 36 years old, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and it's cool for him to take that beat to make sure Altuve gets that ball. That is
yeah,
cool.
And I mean, sure, he looks like if you were to draw a face on a thumb, but that's not something to hold against him.
Pretty buff thumb, at least. I feel like it's like a rock hard thumb. Yeah. I think that's all I got for World Series wise. I think we're in the same place, rooting for a good series and rooting for a Nationals win. Yeah.
Should we do a little ad break?
Let's ad, and then we'll talk about the Cubs.
All right. Well, as always, we are sponsored by Thrive Fantasy, a new DFS app for prop bets, but it's getting less new every time I do this ad read.
That is true. Yeah. Let's talk about the time-space continuum on Away Games. Follow us at Away Games Pod.
Thrive Fantasy has streamlined the drafting process and eliminated the need to do unnecessary hours of research by using only top-tier athletes. So instead of the traditional salary cap format, you build your lineup around a list of prop bets. Each unique prop has an over and under point value assigned to it, and you will be rewarded for that point value if that prop is correct. Basically, the less likely the prop is to occur, the more points the choice will be worth, and you build your team around the amount of correct props you select. And here's a little improv for you guys. While it is a baseball podcast, we are recording this on Tuesday, the first day of the NBA season. So,
yes.
Go have some fun. There's a couple cool games tonight. We get to see Zion Williams' first game, I think against the Raptors or something like that. And then the second game is the LA Clippers-Lakers matchup, which should be pretty fun.
The LA one will be Zion is out for 6 to 8 weeks.
What? How did I miss this?
Yeah.
What happened?
Knee.
Oh, boy.
It's bad.
Well, did a shoe explode?
Not this time. I think with this one was
just his knee.
This is more internal, unfortunately.
Wow, I completely missed that. Well, don't bet on Zion. This is my pro tip. If you're using Thrive Fantasy, do not bet Zion on your choice of picks.
I would take the under on all Zion things.
Oh yeah. So use promo code AWAYGAMES, all one word, and you'll get a free $10 bonus with your first deposit of $10 or more. Once again, that's Thrive Fantasy. We will share the link, and Away Games is the promo code to use.
Yeah, Away Games, the code for Thrive Fantasy, and a great point about the NBA season starting up. Just exponentially more to gamble on. That's very exciting.
Hell
if
yeah.
You're a me.
And hockey, I think, right?
Hockey's already happening. Yeah. So this is and football's going. This is one of the. Basically the only window of the year right now when all four quote-unquote North American major sports are happening.
Yeah, and let's be honest, for anybody listening to this who's a Chicago person, I think you'd rather hear us talk about the Cubs offseason than the Bears regular season.
Less than a minute on this, but the last game against the Saints was one of the most annoying, painful games I've ever watched.
Horrible. Just horrible.
Man, it's just...
Aren't you so glad they didn't draft Watson or Mahomes, though?
I'm glad they traded up to not draft him, especially. Yeah, and I've said this before, I get not knowing that Mahomes is going to be magical. I get it. Deshaun Watson was, to quote the late, great Dennis Green, he is who we thought he was. He was awesome the whole time. He was awesome the whole time. Played at a high level for a championship team, beat Alabama, was mobile, seems like a great guy. And, but when you can get a one-year starter out of North Carolina, good. You got to. How do you not trade up for that? Real fucking...
Kevin and I are in our 30s, and we have never seen a good Bears quarterback.
I would say Cutler had good... I would say he was good for a year. Here and there a couple of times.
Yeah,
I would say good. I would not say very good. He was always a tease, I thought. But we thought that it seemed like for a minute maybe Trubisky was going to be the first good one. And Trubisky...
He's gotten worse.
He's gotten worse. He still ranks under Cutler. Cutler was better than Trubisky. And, maybe it turns around next week. But not feeling hopeful.
No. So how do we want to wrap this up? A little Cubs talk?
Let's talk about the manager. The manager is the news, right? The manager is the not news yet, but it seems like we're in a zone where it's down to two. By all accounts, it seems to be down to David Ross and Joe Espada. So what are your thoughts as we come to this head? Which now at this point, it seems like the World Series is starting, and the Major League Baseball does not. Allow is a strong word, but they kind of don't allow big news like this to drop until after the World Series now, so we're going to have to wait another week or so.
Yeah, well, they don't want a repeat of like the A-Rod news breaking during the World Series.
Right. So how are you feeling as we go into the final week of not having a Cubs manager?
I still don't know a ton about Espada. Obviously, I know that they were super impressed with him, and that's the reason that they want to bring him in for a second interview. I'm a little curious about Ross in terms of like, it seems to me that Ross will be the manager of the Cubs at some point. Like I kind of feel like it's trending that way.
See, I feel like if he doesn't get it this time, he won't be.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think he would be the sort of person who would not be open to being, like, if he doesn't get it this time, would he either feel jilted and or would he not want to be the guy to kind of help build a team if they're rebuilding in a few years?
It's hard to say, because I think at this point it seems like he's all in on this job. And I could be wrong. If he's not, then okay. But I think if he says, I'm in, I want this job, if that's what he said, and that's what he's conveyed to them after working in the front office for a couple years and them knowing him as well as they do, I do think maybe he, and I think not just he, I think anyone would have a hard time going back to that team when they were like, well, we know all about you. We want the new guy,
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, do you have any strong opinions if we're choosing between the two?
I think they're two good choices. I think these were the two guys I was most interested in to start with. And caveat, as always, no one knows shit about who's going to be a good manager, really, or even how much a manager is ultimately worth, et cetera, et cetera. But these were the two guys I was most interested in, Carlos Beltran being the other name, and Raul Ibanez a little bit too, but those guys did not, were not interested. Beltran specifically turned down an interview with the Cubs, and Ibanez, I think, just turned down all managerial interviews for this year. So these were the two guys I was interested in. Espada, basically, he managed. He managed in the minors with the Marlins. He was third base coach for the Marlins. Then he joined the Yankees as a special assistant. So he's got some of that special assistant to GM Brian Cashman. He did that in 2014, and then he was the Yankees' third base coach after that. So he worked for a good organization under Girardi over there, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And then the Astros hired Espada away after the 2017 season. He also was a coach with Team Puerto Rico when Javi was over there.
He was there firsthand to see the magic tag.
He was. Yep, he was there he was in the dugout for that no look. And one thing he does with the Astros right now is he's fully in charge of organizing their infield defense and shifts and that kind of thing. So he's a guy who has a nice mix of, it seems like, working in the front office a little bit, and for teams like the Yankees and the Astros, he's a guy who you would think is up on sort of very up to the second cutting edge analytical stuff. And it seems like people really like him as a guy too.
And I'll tell you what, if it works out the way it did with Alex Cora leaving the Astros, I'm cool with that. If he comes in, the Cubs immediately win a World Series next year.
Absolutely, and that's who he replaced on the Houston bench. He took Alex Cora's spot. So, I mean, you really could, for a guy who has not managed in the major leagues before, it would be hard to find a better resume than what Joe Espada is bringing to the table. Yeah. And if you want to know how hard a worker he is, he also has coached, I believe, in the he coached in Liga de Baseball Profesional in Roberto Clemente winter baseball. So he's also been a winter baseball coach. So this guy he's done, you couldn't ask him to do more, right. Building a resume, really. So I think Espada seems like he would be a really great choice.
I think it's possible that Ross is the sexy pick and Espada is the smarter pick.
It could be, and yet I still think I want David Ross for this job. And I think it's not just emotional. I think it's not just sentiment. What are you thinking?
Well, I think the public perception of David Ross is not in line with how his teammates think of him and thought of him. Like, if you've read the Cubs Way, which is the Verducci book, like it's very clear that Ross was a guy who was like pretty hard on his teammates in a constructive way.
Yeah.
And would be holding people accountable. Whereas in the media, and because of Dancing with the Stars and being on ESPN and all that, he kind of has this like, oh yeah, lovable Grandpa Rossi, but like he's kind of a hard ass.
Yeah.
And I think that could be something that would be really good for this team. The reason I like Espada is the same reason that I was into the idea of Ibanez or Beltran, which is that I don't think this hurt Madden, but I think that it would be nice to have a multilingual manager on a team with so many Latin American guys.
Sure, I think that's an interesting element too, and we should say Madden does speak a decent amount of Spanish as well. And if you saw how the art that Wilson Contreras had
awesome.
Had commissioned of him and Joe, and you can see how much he meant to, and how much the Latin players on the team did love Joe Madden. Also, Joe Madden has a program in Hazleton, Pennsylvania's hometown, that is. Attempts to integrate the rapidly growing Hispanic population there, and so as far as a white guy,
I'm not suggesting that.
I know you're not.
Like out of touch with those players.
Yeah, I know you're not. I'm just saying. Yeah, just throwing out the Madden sort of credentials when it comes to multilingualism and stuff like that. But yeah, I do think that would be an interesting element and a cool element to bringing in Espada. But as you said, I do think to me, Espada reads sort of with the extensive coaching career before getting a shot. And Espada's still a pretty young guy for the resume he has, but he reads a little bit like a Madden, like a Joe. He strikes me as more of a Joe Madden type, which, by the way,
like a career baseball guy who's paid his dues.
Yeah, and like analytic forward and creative, it seems. And all those are good things. Those are things I like, and neither one of us wanted Joe Madden gone.
Right.
But I think if you think this team needs a new element, the best Joe Madden-esque manager to have was Joe Madden. So if you think this team needs a new element personality-wise, I think you have to go David Ross, because that David Ross brings, even though he's been within the organization, he's worked with these players before, I think he weirdly is maybe more different than Madden than Espada would be. Because of exactly what you said. This is sort of like, he is kind of a hard ass about stuff. Yeah. A backup catcher who could get in John Lester's face, that's balls. Like Lester, and the dude has balls, and people respect him. I mean, we've heard the current Cubs talk about him and how much they respect him.
Here's one thing that I question, and I realize that I'm truly reaching with this comparison.
Yeah.
But when I was in college, I ran the club tennis team. It's basically like a step below, like actually being a college level athlete. And I played on the team, but I also ran the team.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was very hard navigating being friends with people and knowing them outside of that context, but also making the objective decision of this person deserves to play and this person doesn't. And I always wonder that it's not that dissimilar from being a player manager for Ross, because he was a player with half of these guys, that I wonder how you navigate that. And right. I think that would be a problem for anybody who was coming into a situation where they had, because if Ross managed any other team, it wouldn't be the same. Mm-hmm. Just because he was a contemporary of them wouldn't be the same, but he was on the team, 3 years ago. So that would be interesting to see. And I don't doubt that he would be able to figure it out, but I think that's an added layer that you wouldn't face with Espada.
I think it certainly is, and that's something that Theo talked about in the postseason sort of state of the team address,
right?
Where and it was hard to tell if it was more him putting it out there just trying to make it seem like Ross was not a fait accompli, or if this was really a concern for him. But it seemed like Ross, having been with this team, was not a distinct positive in his mind. So
right.
I everything I read says that Ross is still the favorite. I feel like if I was betting, I would bet on them picking Espada at this point, because if they were going to announce Ross, they could have done it yesterday.
Right.
We know they brought in Espada for a second interview. So
have they already done that?
Yeah, that happened yesterday, I believe, or Monday now at this point when this podcast airs. But I do believe that I just feel like it's trending Espada, and it's going to be hard for me to not feel sad if Ross doesn't get it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I also think Espada's a great hire. So I think I think they're both good hires. I'm happy if it was anyone but those two, I would be actively frustrated.
Yeah,
and
I think it will be.
You know, and I really do think it's going to be one.
I don't think it's going to be Clint Hurdle out of left field.
God, this team needs a new element, and that element is sucking ass. And
Coomer.
Yes.
The best part of having Coomer as manager would be that you wouldn't have to hear him during the fifth inning.
Yeah.
Zach Zaidman, new Cubs manager.
Zach Zaidman, by the way, I feel like he gets a decent amount of hate on
Yeah, I don't mind him.
in general as a broadcaster, and I don't know. I think that's sort of overblown.
I feel that way about Joe Buck.
Yeah,
I feel like he does a good job.
Yeah, I agree. I think in both cases the hate for how they broadcast is overblown. I will say Zach Zaidman goes out of his way to block everyone on Twitter who's who's just like mentioned the word Zach in a tweet. That's weird, dude. That's fucked up. Why even be on Twitter? That's
a real
strange.
Tobman-ass move right there.
Yeah. Tobman-ass weak move. And why do you do that? He seems cool otherwise to me. Yeah, and I do think people forget how it was when Ron Coomer was calling the fifth, because people shit on Zaidman calling the fifth. Anyone's worse than Pat Hughes, but guys, Coomer was a true play-by-play disaster. Great guy, but like the Zaidman was an improvement in the fifth. Anyway,
nice.
All right.
Well, I basically the bottom line is I hope that the takeaway for our listeners is that I am good at tennis.
Yeah, you are good at tennis. You've stayed good at tennis. You're still tennising.
I have. I'm still tennising to this very day.
Yes. Follow us at awaygamespod on Instagram, on Twitter. As Adam said, we'll be live tweeting the World Series, most likely. One of us will, maybe both of us sometimes. Yeah, I think that's all I got. You got anything else?
I got nothing. Although, if we have any listeners who just happen to be in either North Carolina or Maryland,
yes,
I will be out in. I'll be in Asheville, North Carolina, this Friday and Saturday. That's the 25th and 26th, headlining a place called La Zoom. And Sunday, I will be in Frederick, Maryland, at a place called the Cellar Door. So if you just happen to be in one of those places and you want to come see me do some stand-up, hit me up.
Nice. Great. Sounds great. Go see Adam do stand-up. That's what we do for jobs. We do stand-up comedy, you know? So,
You're not paying the rent with this?
With this podcast? Not yet. We're inching ever so closer.
Come on, Marquis. Come on. You got the money.
Thanks to Thrive Fantasy. Go get the free $10. Use the away games.
And do not bet on Zion.
Do not. Thanks for listening, everybody. Catch you next week, maybe with a new manager.